going to talk about smart transactions and how we can perform our on-chain actions in a more efficient and interesting way. But before we learn about smart transaction, let's talk about what is a usual regular native transaction. Following the docs, native transaction, it's a cryptographically signed instruction from an account, and the important things here, it's a phrase account and instruction. When you execute some action on chain, and any chain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Near, Algorand, whatever, usually your transaction looks like this. From, for example, you, from Alice, from user to Bob, to someone, and what's the action this transaction will perform. And here we see that send one coin. And these native transactions, when we're talking about transaction, we are talking about changing common state between nodes. Here we see that when the user send some actions to a node, they go through consensus and they are changing their common state, which we call blockchain, this database. So transaction, it's state changing. And if we are talking about decentralized applications, and if your applications based on some blockchains, user from wallet send the transaction, like from user wallet to smart contract and perform some action, and we see that node directly don't call any smart contracts, it's just change state of the smart contracts, but here we will talk about like node do something with the smart contracts in a more abstract way. And interesting things here, we should notice that user and wallet, it's one entity, but in the next slides, we will see that they are separated thanks to account abstraction. I hope you listened to previous speaker about account abstraction. It's really important to understand this topic. So, what's the problem with native transactions? There is some benefits and some minuses. First of all, they are natives, and it means that we don't need to change any clients. We don't need to change anything on our web application. Everything works well. Libraries, frameworks, everything works the same. And it's understandable for developers. If you work on Bitcoin, Algorand, Ethereum, you can easily change your chain and you will really understand another chain, tooling, etc. But there is some big problems. I believe that one of the big problems why we still don't have a lot of people, users in the crypto, it's that simple that users can cover, users still have to cover their fees. And let's imagine the world where users directly pay for services. For servers, for example, you post something on Instagram and at the same time you have to pay for their database, for their office, for the cleaning of their office. We can imagine that in this situation that Instagram could exist, but that's how we live in Web3 right now, when ask our users to pay for them. That's strange. And native transaction can be extendable in the ways which we need. And I mean that if you want to upgrade your application, you can do it on a transaction level. And if you want to upgrade transaction level, you can do it without consensus. I mean, you can change anything on your node without like a consensus. Every node should change it. And you need to execute like a new update on your network. It's impossible if you're just application. After that, we got meta transaction, which made our lives a little bit better. Now we can cover user fees thanks to meta transaction. It's when I say meta transaction, I mean account abstraction transaction or meta transaction where which implemented in some tokens. For example, USDC has like a relayer things which allows you to transfer USDC without gas fees from the user. And on the picture we see two types of transaction. There is still our regular native transaction, and here we see bundler. What is a bundler? In our case, it can be relayer, bundler, or some services. I'll call it bundler. And here we see that the user signed meta transaction. It can be whatever. It requires a bundler. It's just a signed object with information like from user to user smart contract account, execute some action. Yeah, and we see now that user and his wallet, smart contract account, they're separated. because of accounts abstraction, we now can separate two these entities. But it also can be like a protocol which allows you to execute something with a permit without approve. Yeah, something with like a signature from the user and without transaction. And in this case, user just send a signed message to a bundler, and bundler execute this transaction on the blockchain, which means the message sender in this case will be the bundler, not a user. What about benefits of it? Now we have a gas list for user. We can cover users' fees. We have batching, which allows us to execute as many actions as we want in the one transaction in the batch. It means I can send a lot of tokens to different people. I can perform a lot of actions as the same transaction. For example, swap something, send to someone, borrow to someone, borrow to something. Whatever you want, you can perform the one transaction. It's really useful. And we have really good key management right now, because we can have multi-signature wallets. We can have like a recovery policy for them. For example, I can delegate a recovery key to my family, and they will be able to recover my assets. But I still have some problems. As I said, extendability. If you want to upgrade your application, you can do it on the transaction level. And if you want to upgrade transaction level, you need a consensus and change the whole network. And yes, they are not native. Now, to execute meta transaction, you need to adapt your application for it. For example, if you want to enable 4327, account abstraction or whatever, you need to adapt your application. And I think you won't be able to have at the same time two type of application. I mean, one for a regular transaction, one for account abstraction. You need to choose one. When I talk about extendability and why it's so important, because I believe that we can exist, we can survive in this like a market if you can adapt your product to users' needs, and you need improve your product, you need to implement new features. And if you try to build something on-chain, you will understand that it's impossible to change everything every day, like every week, every month. I mean, when you're working in Web2 businesses, you can fix something, you can change it like every day. If you have an on-chain protocol, you can do it. For example, between V2 and V3, you will have like a 1 year of development, because you need to develop it, you need to test it, you need to audit it. The important point here, it's an audit, because it takes a lot of time, money, and everything. But we want to implement new features in the more efficient way. Yeah, let's, as example, take a simplest application that we can imagine. It's just a wallet, which allows you to send some funds to another person. Let's say there is a bundler, there is a node, smart contract account, and Bob. We want to send some funds to the Bob. Okay, we have a wallet based on smart contract account, and there is a button which allows us to send money to Bob. Okay, we push this button and send money to Bob. Perfect. But tomorrow, our user came to us and asked, can I do it every day? I don't want to push button every day. I want to do it automatically every day to send some funds to the Bob. And to implement this feature for our user, we have to improve our smart contract account. We need to enable automation module. We need to enable it to some automation network. And also our user asked us about what if I don't want to send like some funds to the Bob if the gas price is really, really high. Okay, in this case, we also need a condition model which will say possible to execute this transaction or not possible based on the transaction fee. Yeah, and the problem here that if we want to use extendability on the application level, it requires a lot of time. It changes the transaction. It affects the regular transaction, because now we see that we don't just send one coin, we send one coin and set up a job on the automation network. And it requires much more gas, it requires much more actions for us, and it became like inefficient. Also the same things which, if we want to improve some protocol on chain, we need to extend it with some extension, with some other integration. Yeah, so there is some benefits. It's native, because you change your smart contract, you don't need to change anything between user and your web application, you adapt your web application, you don't need to change any framework. And it fault tolerant, here I mean, because automation, we have on-chain automation, on-chain conditions, and other on-chain extensions. It can be manipulated because that's on-chain. That's impossible. Yeah, but it's inefficient. It's very inefficient, and every additional action requires additional fees, and transactions become more expensive, and our users became less happy. And it's expensive because every feature requires time, human resources, audit, and integration. Yeah, we can afford it. So what if we implement our new feature on the meta transaction level, which I mean that we improve our bundler. In this case, we don't have any changes on the smart contract account, on the protocol. We have changes on the bundler, and let's say we have a bundler which can be extended with automation, with triggers, with conditions. Yeah, and it looks nice. It looks much better because now we have the regular transaction, which at the same time as we started, as previous, we from user to Bob send 1 coin. But we changed our meta transaction. Now we have additional fields. If you see, now we have not just a from to and what, we have something like a repeat every day and some condition if fee is low. And extendability and extensions in this case don't affect the regular transaction, but affect the meta transaction. And bundler has a lot of extensions right now, but it's not a problem because we can run our own bundler with our features, or we can open source it and everyone will be able to use the same features. So what here is the problem? It's good because we can we can improve our application without changing in protocol. And we need change like our bundler, relayer, or maybe we change a little bit our front end, our web application for it. It's still not native, and apps and wallet should be adapted for account abstraction or meta transaction, and it's efficient and inefficient at the same time because meta transactions still require more fees than native transaction, but we don't change native transaction here, and in this way it's efficient, so it's not so bad. But we also can improve our application based on the native level transaction, thanks to MAV, which showed us that we can manipulate the block. And let's imagine now we can imagine it's happening. We can have our own modified node for any blockchain. For example, this node will be able to execute automation, triggers, and condition. And in addition to our regular transaction, like from user to another user send 1 coin, we will have additional metadata, like repeat every day, and if some condition, for example, if the fee is low. But they're different between regular smart transaction and smart meta transaction. In the case of the regular transaction, users sign only regular transaction, which is from, to, and what, and additional information is not signed. It's a fact in that way that we can prove that user really wanted it because it's not included in the whole transaction. But in the case of the meta transaction, users sign everything, so we can't manipulate. For example, we can repeat it not every day, but every hour, every minute. But in case of the node, on the regular smart transaction, we can do it. What's the problem with extendability on the native transaction level? It's very efficient, to be honest. It's very efficient. I would like to have such transaction. And it's native. It means we don't need to change anything on-chain. We don't need to change anything in our clients. We just need to implement some additional features, maybe some RPC calls. But it makes batching inefficient because in the native transaction we can't batch everything into one big action. We need like 3, 4 different transactions, but we still can have like a batching because node can manipulate the order of the transaction. And for example, if I need to send to someone and after that there's someone sent to another person some funds, we can execute in the same block first transaction and after the second transaction, and everything will be good. And extensions are not signed. It means, as I said, they can be manipulated on the node. And all of these three aspects make us think that smart transactions, it's like a common, it's a sum of three previous type of modification of our transaction on the three different levels. And in this slide, I want to say that smart transactions is not like a silver bullet. We don't have this one, but we have three different types how we can improve it. And we need to choose this one based on our needs and needs of our products. For example, for some products, it will be better to implement it at the node level, or for someone it will be better implement on the bundler level. So let's sum up what is the smart transaction and what is not. Smart transactions, it's transactions which can extend up and improve application without big changes in application. Smart transaction can be gasless for users. It can be triggered by an event, whatever, off-chain or on-chain, for example, the gas price or a price Bitcoin on the centralized exchange, or maybe based on the weather. It can be automated, I mean scheduled, it can be delayed, so it can be performed perform this transaction every day, which is really useful for DCA strategies. And it can be executed or not executed based on some conditions. It can contain many actions, many transactions, many calls. So it's batching. It can be extended in any new way. On my presentation, I mentioned only automation, only triggers, condition, but if you need your own needs, you can implement it for your bundler, for your node, open source it, and if people will need it, they will run at the same code. And we can replace native transactions with smart transactions because they're more interesting, they provide us more interesting features, and we don't need to still think and our users about which transaction they perform, because they still let's imagine you're again post something on the Instagram and Instagram asks on which protocol do you wanna post it, like using CTP, HTTP, whatever. People don't need it, users don't need it, and we can replace native transaction with a smart transaction for our users. So we will keep native transactions on the low level and we won't know about them anything. We'll perform high level actions. And smart transaction can be a product. Smart transaction can replace the protocols, they can replace some decentralized applications, and that's my favorite part of smart transactions, and that's on what we're working in our projects. And let's take a look why transactions can be product and how it looks like transactions as a product. Let's say I want to create my own DCA strategy. I want to buy wrap BTC every day on 10 USDT. And this transaction will be executed every day. For these reasons, you can use centralized exchange, you can use some DCA protocols or some other solutions. But tomorrow I wanna improve my application. I wanna not just buy red BTC, I wanna also buy some ETH on that. And you can change your DCA protocols or your centralized exchange really quick, but you can easily add another action into your batch smart transaction, and it will be performed you just add one block. Moreover, I want to add something like borrowing some USDT from Aave or another lending protocol. Let's say I have some deposit on the Aave. I'm bullish on red BTC and Ethereum. I push them into deposit in the lending protocol to make some yield. And now I want to borrow based on that some USDT and buy more red BTC and Ethereum. So I also can grab this block add this block into my smart transaction, and it will be my product. I can share it to my users, to my friends. I can share some actions, and it will be whatever you want. So we can replace some protocols, some products with the smart transactions. Yeah, and that's on what we are working in our project. We also can have some conditions, like if BTC price less than $30K dollars and the fee is less than $1, we can improve it with a bunch of actions. We can add more actions, and we can like change automation from every day to every second or I don't know, every new moon. Yeah, and that's all. Yeah, here you can ask questions if you have questions. While we're waiting questions, you can follow us in the Twitter, me and my protocol.
Ahí va queriendo. Ahí está. ¿Alguna pregunta que quieran hacerle? ¿Sí? ¿No? ¿No? ¿Hable ahora o calle para la próxima charla? ¿No? Perfecto.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.